Okay, so let's see this particular sentence on odd one out, right? So before we get into this, let's understand the sentences. So the water that made up ancient lakes and perhaps an ocean was lost, right? So this kind of the sentence is telling us that it's talking about some sort of the water that made up ancient lakes and perhaps an ocean was lost. Now, particles from the sun collided with the molecules in the atmosphere, knocking them into space or giving them an electrical charge that caused them to be swept away by the solar wind, right? Let's see here. Now, most of the planet's remaining water is now frozen or buried, but clues over the past decade suggested that some liquid water, a presumed necessity for life, might survive in an underground aquifers. Okay, the data from the NASA's Maven orbiter show that solar systems striped away most of Mars once thick atmosphere, right? Now solar winds, okay, and then solar storms, they are connected, right? Let's keep it on a hold. Now, a recent study reveals how Mars lost much of its early water, while another indicates that some liquid water remains. So, some liquid water remains might be in underground water aquifers, so storm, okay. Some water remains, okay, underground water aquifers. So that makes kind of a rough idea that the first is an odd one out, right? Now let's again see it deeper and analyze it deeper. So out of the sentences, in case if I want to arrange it in the parajumble sequence, then I can say that the fifth is an opening sentence. So a recent study reveals how Mars lost much of its water, and then while another indicates that some liquid water remains, right? So it's presents with the two ideas: Mars lost much of its waters, and but still some water remains, okay. And then after that we can say that either for or whatever, right? So data from NASA's Maven orbiter show that the solar storms stripped away most of Mars' once thick atmosphere, right? So one of the rough calculation is that the atmosphere loss likely caused water loss, right? And then we can say the two is kind of the four and two to pair hai, okay, because the two is kind of explaining the detailed mechanism of what is being highlighted in fourth. So particles from the sun collided with molecules in the atmosphere, knocking them into the space or giving them an electrical charge that caused them to be swept away by the solar wind, right? Abhi solar wind ka idea, and then this 4 and 2 definitely, right? 4 and 2 is a block in a pair, right? Now, in case if we look at the remaining sentences, so we can kind of figure out that the 3 also talks about it, right? Now, 3 says that much of the planet's remaining water, now most of them have been swept away by the solar wind. So, अब जितना भी water बचा है, right? So, most of them with the kind of, you can say that yeah, so most of the planet's remaining water is now frozen or buried, but clues over the past decade suggest that some liquid water, a presumed necessity for life, might survive in underground aquifers, that there may be some water remains. So that's the case. Now the water that made up ancient lakes and perhaps an ocean was lost, okay. So this is an odd one out. Now why this is an odd one out is that because it does not fit the context, right? Now, why does it does not fit the context is that because it just gives a one of the detail or a evidence, okay? It is not kind of, you can say that talks about the data, recent study, Mars ka hai ya nahi, okay? It looks like a very general sentence, okay? And it does not explain that how does the water was lost, okay? It does not provide some sort of scientific data and something so which is being given in a sentence data from here, right? Recent study, and then again your this particles from the sun collided. So that's the case. So that is the reason that the first is an odd one out, because for the others we can make the clue, right? Yeah, Mars lost how much of the water, some liquid water remains, some liquid water किस form में remain है, in the form of an underground water fires, okay, aquifers, and then solar winds and storms. So that's the reason that the one is an odd one out. I hope you got that.